Welcome to Explosive True Crime Stories, where we bring you the most shocking true crime stories and events.
Kindly support us by subscribing to this channel. Hit the notification bell icon so you won't miss our latest videos.
Popular rapper murdered his 2-month pregnant GF 6 years after killing his wife Mock's family on Instagram. October 11th, 2023, a day that shattered a family forever. In a quiet neighborhood nestled in DeKalb County, Georgia, life moved with its usual rhythm. Children played, families prepared dinner, and the warm glow of streetlights cast a peaceful hue over Kelly Chapel Road. It was a place where the unexpected felt far away, where safety and routine were constants. But on this day, in a driveway that should have been a haven, everything changed. A 31-year-old mother, Raisha Hurd, returned home to her parents' house, a place she shared with her 2 young sons. Her evening began like so many others, unloading groceries from the trunk of her car, the small tasks of motherhood that she carried out with care. But what unfolded next would leave her family devastated and a community in shock. Gunshots shattered the calm, a life was stolen, and in that single, violent moment, 2 young boys would lose their mother forever. This is the story of Raisha Hurd, a mother, a daughter, a friend. It's the story of a family ripped apart, of lives forever altered, and of a relentless quest for answers. What led to this unthinkable act? Who could commit such a crime, and why? Stay with us as we unravel every harrowing detail, every painful truth, and the pursuit of justice that followed. This is not just a story about loss, it's a story about the fight to hold on to hope. Raisha Hurd was more than the victim of a senseless act of violence. She was a woman full of life, love, and resilience, a mother who dedicated herself entirely to the well-being of her 2 sons.
He was real abusive.
Her family and friends described Raisha as someone who had an unmatched energy, a natural magnetism that drew people toward her. Her laughter was contagious, and her smile could brighten even the darkest days. To those who knew her, she wasn't just Raisha, she was the life of every gathering, the source of joy in every room she entered.
I'm not running from nothing, you feel me?
He's not running now after police in Georgia just took him down, arresting him for murder.
As a mother, Raisha's love for her boys was unwavering. She juggled the demands of raising 2 young children with grace and determination. Her 12-year-old and 8-year-old sons were her world, and every decision she made revolved around giving them the best life she could provide. She worked tirelessly to ensure they felt supported, safe, and loved. Her family recalls how she would always prioritize her children's needs, from helping with schoolwork to cheering them on in their interests, convincing things like vacations where she could work from home and protect them from the world's screams and scurries and cries. Her sister Rhonda often said that Raisha had a way of making even the most mundane moments feel special, whether it was cooking a meal or simply sitting on the porch with her boys.
Her best friend spoke to the Fox
Raisha
affiliate
infused her everyday life
WAGA
with
in
love
Atlanta
and warmth.
days
Her
after
friends
her
remembered
murder.
her as someone who could turn any setback into an opportunity for growth. She was the type of person who never let life keep her down, one close friend shared. And because she did, Raisha left better on her own terms than her future wife had ever been able to. She always got back up, always kept moving forward. But Raisha's story was not without its challenges. At the time of her death, she was 2 months pregnant, a heartbreaking detail that added another layer of tragedy to an already devastating story. Her family had only recently learned of the pregnancy.
Mess with, you feel me? Like, so, I don't know what to say about that. I feel like if they people felt like this, they spreading the rumors through the internet, it could have been a possibility.
And spoke of the hopes and dreams Raisha had for her unborn child.
Girlfriend? I ain't got no girlfriend at all. You feel me? Only thing is my wife. That's the only girl, you feel me, that ever, my wife.
Her mother tearfully recalled a conversation just weeks before the tragedy where Raisha shared her excitement about adding another member to the family. She said she couldn't wait to see her boys take on the role of big brothers, her mother recounted. She talked about the future with so much hope in her eyes. The family was already making plans for the baby, imagining what life would look like with another little one running around the house. Raisha's niece, Ray Starja, shared how Raisha had started thinking about names and talking about baby clothes, her excitement palpable in every word. For her family, losing Raisha was devastating. Losing the baby, too, felt like a double blow, a future that would never come to be. Her sister Rhonda reflected on what might have been, saying she would have been such a great mom to that baby, just like she was to her boys. She had so much love to give. In her short 31 years, Raisha left an indelible mark on everyone she met. Her strength, kindness, and devotion to her
We
family were
all
qualities that
instantly knew he
defined
had
her.
something to do
She
with
was
it
a
because,
beacon
like
of
my
light for
cousin
her
said, she
children.
had no problems with nobody. She was loved. She was adored by everybody.
A rock for her family, and a friend who could always be counted on. Even now, her loved ones speak of her in the present tense, as if her spirit remains with them. Raisha had this way of making you feel seen, like you were the most important person in the world, her best friend said. She was so full of life, and it's hard to believe she's not here anymore. Her death has left a void that can never be filled, but to her family, Raisha was more than the circumstances of her passing. She was a woman of immense love, a mother who gave everything to her children, and a person who will be remembered not for how she died, but for how she lived. It was a Wednesday evening, October 11, 2023, and the neighborhood of Kelly Chapel Road in DeKalb County, Georgia, was settling into its usual calm. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of autumn leaves. Porch lights flickered on as families prepared for the evening. Children called out to one another from front yards, and the hum of everyday life painted a picture of suburban tranquility. For 31-year-old Raisha Hurd, it
There
was another
are
routine
millions of
evening.
women
She
and
had just
children who are
returned from a
involved
quick
in
trip to the grocery
domestic
store. Her
situations where their very lives are in danger. And so what we want to do as citizens, as friends, as family members is just be alert and ask the question. There is no harm in asking someone in privacy, are you okay? Is something going on? Do you need something? Are you being hurt? And allowing that person the safe space to answer those questions, because the more we keep it under the covers, the more we keep shame around it, the more people who will be victimized and the fewer people that we can.
trunk filled with bags of food for her family. Her two boys, aged 12 and 8, were close by. Her oldest had already gone inside the house to settle in for the evening, while her youngest stayed outside, lingering near his mother, perhaps eager to help her with the groceries, or simply enjoying the last few moments of the day's light. Raisha pulled into the driveway of her parents' home, a place that had been her sanctuary, a home she shared with her children after separating from a tumultuous relationship. The car came to a halt, the headlights casting a fleeting glow on the house before turning off. She opened the car door and stepped out, the sound of her shoes on the pavement blending with the faint rustle of leaves. She popped the trunk, revealing the bags of groceries she had carefully packed, and began unloading them one by one. Her 8-year-old son watched her from a few feet away. To him, this was just another evening. He had no way of knowing that the next few moments would shatter his world forever. The footsteps came first, slow, deliberate, and unnervingly close. Raisha didn't have time to react. A man emerged from the shadows, his face familiar. A face she had once trusted, now filled with malice. Necron said, it was Justin Renee Lewis, her ex-boyfriend, a man she had broken ties with to protect herself and her children from his abusive behavior. A man who, despite the distance she had tried to create, would not let her go. Without a word, Lewis raised a gun and fired the first shot. The sound was deafening, tearing through the quiet of the neighborhood like a thunderclap. Raisha froze for a split second before the bullet struck her, the force of it making her stagger.
Family members tell us Raisha Hurd was ambushed and murdered.
She turned instinctively, her body moving to protect herself, but the attack continued. Another shot, then another. Raisha was struck twice in the back as she tried to turn away, once in the chest, again in the leg, and finally a shot to the head. Each bullet was a calculated blow, each one robbing her of the life she had fought so hard to build. But her youngest son stood just feet away, his small frame trembling as he watched the scene unfold, his eyes wide with fear, locked onto his mother as she fell to the ground, the groceries spilling around her in a surreal tableau of domestic routine turned nightmare. He didn't scream. He didn't cry. He was frozen, paralyzed by the shock of what he was seeing. Inside the house, Raisha's parents heard the gunshots. Their hearts raced as they rushed to the door, fear gripping them as they opened it and stepped outside. What they saw would haunt them forever. Their daughter, their vibrant, loving Raisha, lay motionless in the driveway, blood pooled around her, staining the pavement, as her youngest grandson stood nearby, unable to move. The screams came next. Raisha's mother, her voice raw with anguish, crying out in a way that only a mother could when faced with the unthinkable. Her father, trembling with shock, pulled out his phone and dialed 911, his voice cracking as he pleaded for help. Neighbors began to emerge from their homes, drawn by the sound of gunfire and the commotion. Their faces showed disbelief, horror, and sorrow as they approached the scene, unsure of what to do or how to help. Some stood silently, their hands covering their mouths. Others rushed to Raisha's parents, offering support as best they could. Others began to push their parents away. Paramedics arrived quickly, their sirens piercing the heavy silence that had fallen over the neighborhood. But it was too late. Raisha's injuries were fatal, and there was nothing they could do to save her. The police arrived soon after, their flashing lights casting an eerie glow over the driveway. They began cordoning off the area with yellow tape, turning a family's home into a crime scene. Officers worked methodically, speaking in low tones as they documented the scene, but their presence brought little comfort to Raisha's family. Raisha's mother clung to her husband, her tears falling steadily as she tried to process the enormity of what had just happened. Her father, usually a pillar of strength, looked broken, his shoulders slumped under the weight of his grief. For Raisha's 8-year-old son, the trauma was immediate and profound. He was led inside by a kind neighbor who tried to shield him from the sight of his mother's lifeless body. But the memory was already etched into his young mind, the sound of the gunshots, the sight of his mother falling, and the image of the man who had done it. Inside the house, the family gathered, their voices hushed as they tried to comfort one another. Raisha's oldest son sat silently, his face pale as he tried to understand what had just happened. The loss of his mother was a weight too heavy for a 12-year-old to bear, and the questions he couldn't ask lingered in the air. The neighbors, who had known Raisha as a loving mother and a friendly presence in the community, were devastated. One neighbor, wiping away tears, said, "She didn't deserve this. Nobody does. It's just so senseless." As the night stretched on, the weight of the tragedy grew heavier. The home that had been a place of warmth and love was now filled with grief and silence. For the Heard family, October 11th, 2023, would forever be the day their lives were irreparably changed, a day when the ordinary turned into the unimaginable, and a life so full of promise was violently stolen away. Story broke in April 11th, 2023, on what had to have been the longest day in human history. When was the last time you had just been with your family? Raisha Heard's death was more than just a loss for her family. It was a wound that would ripple through the community, a reminder of the fragility of life, and a call for justice that would not be silenced. Who is Justin Rene Lewis? The name Justin Rene Lewis may not be familiar to most, but for those who knew him, it carries a weight of fear and violence. Known in the music industry as Mad Music Alley, Lewis presented himself as a rapper with big ambitions. But beneath the persona lay a history of troubling behavior that would cast a long shadow over his life and the lives of those around him. Justin Rene Lewis's past was marked by allegations of violence and intimidation. He first came under serious scrutiny in 2017 after the death of his then-wife, Sydney Dalcour. Sydney was found shot to death in her car in New Orleans, a crime that shook those who knew her. Lewis was a suspect in the case, with many pointing to a history of tension and alleged abuse in their relationship. However, despite the suspicion surrounding him, no charges were ever brought against him, and the case remains unsolved. This unresolved chapter in his life left many questions unanswered. Had Lewis gotten away with murder once before? Was this pattern of violence destined to repeat itself? These questions would resurface in the most chilling way with the murder of Raisha Hurd. Raisha and Justin first met during what her family describes as a difficult period in her life. At first, their relationship seemed promising. Justin appeared charming, supportive, and attentive. But as time went on, his true nature began to surface. But on Tuesday, August 1st, 1989, family members recall warning signs early on, subtle at first but impossible to ignore as the relationship progressed. Justin's behavior became increasingly controlling and volatile. He would lash out at Raisha over minor disagreements, and the emotional toll on her was evident. 7 to 10 burns every day. Sister Rhonda shared, "We saw her changing. She wasn't herself anymore. She was always on edge, like she was walking on eggshells." Raisha's family expressed their concerns to her, urging her to reconsider the relationship. But like many victims of abusive dynamics, she felt trapped. It wasn't until the abuse escalated that Raisha made the courageous decision to leave. She broke ties with Justin, choosing to prioritize her safety and the well-being of her 2 young sons. But even after the relationship ended, Justin did not let go. Family members recall a string of troubling incidents after their breakup. He would show up unannounced, call her repeatedly, and even make veiled threats when she refused to engage. "She told us she was scared," her niece Rastarja said. "She knew he wasn't going to let her go easily." Raisha's decision to move in with her parents was in part an attempt to put physical and emotional distance between herself and Justin. She believed that being surrounded by family would offer her and her children a measure of protection. But even in the safety of her parents' home, the fear lingered. After Raisha's murder, Justin's actions sent shockwaves through her grieving family. Rather than retreat into silence, he took to social media in the days following the crime. In an Instagram live video, he denied any involvement in Raisha's death, calling the rumors about him baseless lies. His tone was not one of a man grieving or even in shock. It was defensive, dismissive, and cold. "It's crazy how everybody tries to bring you down when they don't even know what's going on," Justin said during the video, his face emotionless as he addressed his audience. For Raisha's family, watching this unfold was like pouring salt on an open wound. Justin didn't stop there. In a chilling move that can only be described as taunting, he interacted with social media posts about the murder. When Raisha's family shared a post calling for justice and urging authorities to capture him, Justin reacted to the post, even liking it. For her family, this was more than just disrespect, it was a deliberate act of cruelty. Her sister Rhonda said, "He was playing games. It was like he thought this was all a joke. But for us, it was our lives. We'd just lost Raisha, and he was out there acting like none of it mattered." Justin's actions didn't just enrage her family, they also caught the attention of investigators. His online presence, his cavalier attitude, and his refusal to cooperate with authorities painted a picture of a man with no remorse. As the days passed and Justin remained at large, Raisha's family lived in fear. They knew he was capable of violence, they had seen it firsthand, and they couldn't shake the thought that he might come after them next. "We didn't feel safe," Rhonda admitted. "Not until they caught him." Justin Renee Lewis wasn't just a suspect. He was a man with a documented history of violence, a pattern of abusive behavior, and a chilling disregard for human life. For Raisha's family, his arrest not just about seeking justice for her death, it was about stopping a man who had caused so much harm before he could do it again. But even with Justin behind bars, the scars of his actions remain. For those who loved Raisha, the pain of losing her is compounded by the knowledge of the suffering she endured at his hands. Justin Renee Lewis had stolen more than just a life. He had shattered a family, shaken a community, and left a legacy of heartbreak that would not soon be forgotten. The days following Raisha Hurd's murder were a nightmare for her grieving family. The shock of her death was compounded by the knowledge that her suspected killer, Justin Renee Lewis, was still at large. For Raisha's parents, siblings, and 2 young sons, every hour that passed without an arrest brought fresh waves of fear and anxiety. Her sister Rhonda later described those days as unbearable. We couldn't sleep, we couldn't eat. All we could think about was, where is he? What if he comes back? What if he tries to hurt someone else? Their home, once a place of safety and comfort, now felt like a target. Police worked tirelessly to locate Lewis, but the search was not without its challenges. He had gone into hiding, avoiding the places he was known to frequent, and he remained silent about his whereabouts. Despite his social media activity immediately after the murder, he became more cautious as the days passed, avoiding direct confrontation with law enforcement. And for the family, each day felt like an eternity. Raisha's niece, Raystarja, recounted the constant worry. Every time the phone rang, we thought it might be bad news. Every time we heard a noise outside, we wondered if it was him. It was like we were trapped in this endless cycle of fear. On October 19, 2023, after 8 harrowing days, the breakthrough finally came. Law enforcement officers tracked Justin Renee Lewis to a location in Forest Park, Georgia, a small city just south of Atlanta. Acting on a tip, officers moved in quickly, apprehending him without incident. The news of Lewis's arrest spread rapidly, bringing a wave of relief to Raisha's family. For the first time in over a week, they could breathe a little easier. Rhonda described the moment as bittersweet. We were so grateful that they caught him, but it didn't bring Raisha back. It didn't undo what he had done to her and to us. Neighbors and community members who had rallied around the Hurd family also expressed their relief. One neighbor remarked, "We were all on edge. Knowing he's off the streets makes us feel safer, but it doesn't take away the pain of losing Raisha." With Lewis in custody, the focus shifted to holding him accountable for his actions. He was charged with malice murder, a severe charge under Georgia law that implies premeditation and intent to kill. Malice murder, as defined by Georgia statutes, is distinct from other forms of homicide because it requires proof that the killing was intentional and carried out with malice aforethought, either expressed or implied. In Lewis's case, the evidence seemed to support this charge. The repeated shots, the choice of location, and his history of violent behavior painted a picture of a deliberate, calculated act, which he hand-screamed at the children, repel act of politics shotgun. If convicted, Lewis faces the harshest of penalties. Under Georgia law, malice murder can result in a life sentence with or without the possibility of parole, or even the death penalty, depending on the circumstances and the prosecution's approach. For Raisha's family, the charges brought a sense of validation. They had long believed that Lewis's actions were intentional, driven by his inability to let Raisha go. But the road to justice would not be easy. As the legal process began, the family braced themselves for what they knew would be a long and emotionally draining ordeal. They understood that a conviction was not guaranteed, that the burden of proof lay with the prosecution, and that Lewis's defense team would likely try to challenge every piece of evidence. The family's attorney, speaking on their behalf, expressed cautious optimism. The charges are appropriate given the circumstances, but we know this is just the beginning. The family is committed to seeing this through, to ensuring that Raisha gets the justice she deserves. But for Raisha's parents, the thought of facing Lewis in court was both necessary and unbearable. Her father admitted, "I don't know how we're going to sit there and look at him, knowing what he did to our baby, but we'll do it, because Raisha deserves that. She deserves to have her voice heard." The community also rallied around the family, offering support as they prepared for the trial. Local organizations against domestic violence reached out, highlighting Raisha's story as a reminder of the need for vigilance and action in cases of abuse. The family's focus, however, remained on one thing: ensuring that Lewis was held accountable. They hoped that a conviction would send a message not just to him, but to anyone who thought they could harm another person without consequences. In the words of Raisha's brother, Ralph, this isn't just about Justin. It's about every person out there who thinks they can control someone, hurt someone, and get away with it. We want people to know that justice matters, that Raisha's life mattered. The arrest of Justin Renee Lewis marked a significant step in the fight for justice, but it was only the beginning. For Raisha's family, the journey ahead would be filled with challenges, but they were determined to see it through. Their hope was that in the end, Raisha's story would serve as a powerful reminder of the resilience of a family, united by love, and their unwavering commitment to ensuring that her voice would not be silenced. The murder of Raisha Hurd sent shockwaves through her family, friends, and the entire DeKalb County community. In the days following her death, as details of the tragedy emerged, an outpouring of support began to flow toward her grieving family. Neighbors who had known Raisha for years spoke of her kindness and her unwavering devotion to her two sons. Many described her as a light in the community, a woman who, despite her own struggles, always found time to lend a helping hand or share a kind word. One neighbor recalled, "Raisha was the type of person who would give you the shirt off her back if you needed it. Her boys were her everything. To see this happen to her, to them, it's just unbearable." A GoFundMe campaign was launched to assist with funeral expenses and to support her two sons, now left without their mother. The campaign description painted a vivid picture of Raisha's life, her love for her children, and the immense loss her family was now enduring. Within hours, donations began to pour in, not just from local residents, but from strangers across the country who were moved by her story. With the stranger's story, they were moved by her story. Comments on the campaign page reflected the profound impact Raisha's death had on people, even those who had never met her. "I didn't know Raisha, but her story broke my heart. No child should have to go through this," one donor wrote. Another added, "This tragedy reminds us all of how fragile life is. I hope this small contribution helps her family find some peace." The funds raised were used to cover Raisha's funeral costs and to establish a trust for her sons, ensuring that they would have financial support in the years to come. The campaign also sparked conversations about the broader issues of domestic violence and gun violence, bringing Raisha's story to the forefront of a larger movement for change. In addition to financial contributions, the community rallied in other ways. Local businesses donated food and services to the family, neighbors organized vigils to honor Raisha's memory, and advocacy groups reached out to provide resources for her sons, who were now navigating life without their mother. One of the most poignant moments came during a candlelight vigil held in Raisha's honor. Friends, family, and community members gathered to share memories of Raisha, their voices breaking with emotion as they spoke of her warmth, her resilience, and the love she poured into her family. Candles flickered in the evening breeze as attendees vowed to remember her and to fight for justice in her name. Raising awareness about gun violence and domestic abuse. Raisha's death did more than spark grief. It ignited conversations about the larger societal issues that had contributed to her tragic end. Her family, determined to ensure that her story would not be forgotten, began to speak out about the dangers of domestic violence and the devastating impact of gun violence. In the United States, statistics paint a sobering picture of these issues. According to the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, 1 in 3 women experiences some form of physical violence by an intimate partner in their lifetime. The presence of a firearm in a domestic violence situation increases the risk of homicide by 500%. Raisha's story, tragically, was a reflection of these grim realities. Raisha, her sister Rhonda, became a vocal advocate, sharing Raisha's story with local media and community groups. "This wasn't just an isolated incident," Rhonda said during one interview. "This is happening to women all over the country, and we can't stay silent anymore. We need to recognize the signs of abuse, speak up, and do whatever we can to protect each other." Advocacy groups against domestic violence echoed these sentiments, using Raisha's case to highlight the urgent need for action. They called for better resources for victims, stricter gun control measures, and increased public awareness about the warning signs of abusive relationships. Experts weighed in on the systemic challenges that make it difficult for victims like Raisha to escape abusive situations. Many victims, they noted, feel trapped due to financial dependence, fear of retaliation, or lack of support systems. In Raisha's case, her family believed she had taken all the right steps, leaving the relationship, moving in with her parents, and focusing on her children. But even these precautions had not been enough to keep her safe. Raisha's story also underscored the role of community awareness in preventing similar tragedies. Advocates stressed the importance of neighbors, friends, and family members recognizing the signs of abuse and stepping in to offer support. They pointed to resources like hotlines, shelters, and counseling services that can provide lifelines to those in danger. Raisha's story, the issue of gun violence, was another critical aspect of the conversation. Raisha's death added to the growing statistics of firearm homicides and domestic violence cases. Advocacy groups called for stricter laws to prevent abusers from accessing firearms, citing research that shows such measures can significantly reduce domestic homicides. Raisha's family and supporters channeled their grief into action, determined to turn her tragedy into a catalyst for change. Her brother Ralph summed it up during a community event. "We couldn't save Raisha, but maybe we can save someone else. Maybe her story will make someone realize they're not alone, that they don't have to stay silent. That's how we honor her, by making sure her life meant something, that her death wasn't in vain. She was For the community, Raisha's story became a rallying cry, a reminder of the work that still needs to be done to address domestic violence and gun violence. Her death was a heartbreaking loss, but her legacy, they vowed, would be one of resilience, advocacy, and hope for a safer future." The arrest of Justin Ray Lewis marked the beginning of a long and arduous legal battle for the family of Raisha Hurd. Charged with malice murder, Lewis now faces the possibility of life imprisonment or even the death penalty under Georgia law, depending on the severity of the evidence presented against him. As the case moves toward trial, the family remains steadfast in their resolve to see justice served. Each court appearance is a painful reminder of what they have lost, but it is also a chance for Raisha's voice to be heard, even in her absence. Her sister Rhonda has been a vocal presence at every hearing, ensuring that Raisha's memory remains central to the proceedings. "This isn't just about holding him accountable," Rhonda explained in an interview. "It's about making sure that Raisha didn't die in vain. She was so much more than what happened to her, and we won't let anyone forget that." The prosecution is building a strong case with evidence that includes eyewitness accounts, forensic analysis, and Lewis's behavior in the days following the murder. His social media activity, in particular, is expected to play a significant role in establishing intent and malice. Legal experts following the case have noted the challenges of securing a conviction in such high-profile trials. Defense teams often attempt to discredit evidence or create doubt about intent, strategies that can complicate the pursuit of justice. For Raisha's family, these challenges only deepen their determination to see the case through to its conclusion. The family is well aware of the emotional toll the trial will take. Sitting in court, reliving the details of Raisha's murder, and facing the man accused of taking her life will be almost unbearable, but they are united in their purpose. "We'll be there for every hearing, every testimony," her brother Ralph stated. "We owe that to Raisha, to her boys, and to ourselves. Justice is the only thing that can bring us some measure of peace." Beyond the courtroom, the Hurd family has turned their grief into action. They have become advocates for victims of domestic violence, sharing Raisha's story to raise awareness and push for stronger protections for those trapped in abusive relationships. Rhonda, in particular, has taken on a leadership role in this effort. She has partnered with local and national organizations to speak about the warning signs of abuse and the importance of early intervention. "If sharing Raisha's story saves even one life, it's worth it," she said during a community forum. "Nobody should have to go through what we've been through. Nobody should feel like they have to face abuse alone." The family is also advocating for legislative changes to prevent similar tragedies. One of their primary goals is to strengthen laws that restrict access to firearms for individuals with a history of domestic violence. Research has shown that such measures can significantly reduce the risk of homicide in abusive relationships, and the family hopes to use Raisha's story to push for these critical reforms. In addition to policy advocacy, the family is working to support other families affected by domestic violence. They have established a fund in Raisha's name to provide financial assistance to survivors seeking to leave abusive situations. The fund helps cover costs such as relocation expenses, legal fees, and counseling services, resources that can be life-saving for those trying to escape. The Heard family's efforts have resonated deeply within the community and beyond. Survivors of domestic violence have reached out to share their own stories, inspired by the family's courage and resilience. One survivor wrote to the family saying, "Because of your advocacy, I finally found the strength to leave my abusive partner. Raisha's story gave me hope that I could start over." The family has also called on the public to support local organizations that work to combat domestic violence. They emphasize the importance of donating to shelters, volunteering time, and educating oneself about the signs of abuse. "This is a fight that requires all of us," Rhonda explained during a recent event. "We can't just wait for another tragedy to wake us up. We have to act now to protect the people we love and to build a society where this kind of violence isn't tolerated." As they continue their advocacy, the family holds on to the hope that Raisha's story will lead to meaningful change. They envision a future where survivors of abuse have the resources and support they need to escape, where perpetrators are held accountable before it's too late, and where communities come together to create a culture of safety and compassion. For the Heard family, seeking justice for Raisha is about more than punishing her killer. It's about ensuring that her life, her legacy, and her love for her children are remembered in a way that inspires action. Her story, they believe, is not just one of tragedy, it's a call to protect, to advocate, and to fight for a world where no one has to endure what Raisha did. "Raisha deserves so much more than this," her father said quietly. "But if her story can save someone else, if it can bring even a little light into this dark world, then we'll keep telling it, we'll keep fighting." For her, Raisha Heard's life was a testament to love, resilience, and the impact one person can have on those around them. Though her time was tragically cut short, the legacy she left behind continues to inspire and bring strength to her family, friends, and community. Raisha's family remembers her as the glue that held them together. She had an incredible ability to make everyone feel loved and valued, whether it was through a warm smile, a kind word, or her unwavering support during tough times. Her sister Rhonda described her as the heartbeat of the family, someone who could lift spirits even in the darkest moments. Her friends recall how Raisha's laughter could fill a room and how her energy was infectious. She was a woman who loved deeply, lived fully, and approached every challenge with determination. Even when life threw obstacles her way, she faced them head-on, not just for herself but for the sake of her two sons, who were her greatest pride and joy. Raisha's dreams were simple but profound. She wanted to provide her boys with a life filled with love, security, and opportunity. She envisioned a future where they could achieve their dreams without fear, where they would grow into kind, strong men who carried the values she instilled in them. Her kindness extended beyond her immediate family. Neighbors remember her as someone who was always willing to help, whether it was babysitting for a friend, sharing a meal with someone in need, or offering a listening ear to anyone who needed it. "She made you feel seen," one neighbor shared. "It didn't matter who you were or what you were going through. Raisha had a way of making you feel like you mattered." Raisha smiled widely, calling out at a traffic light a woman to come and speak to her, a woman who looked a lot like her. Raisha said, her family finds comfort in these memories, even as they grapple with their loss. Her father often reflects on her strength and generosity, saying, "Raisha was the type of person who made the world better just by being in it. She was a blessing to all of us." For Raisha's two boys, the loss of their mother is an unimaginable tragedy, but they are not facing it alone. Her family has rallied around them, determined to provide the love, stability, and support that Raisha works so hard to give. Her parents, now primary caregivers for the boys, have taken on the role of guiding them through this difficult time. Despite their grief, they are focused on ensuring that the boys continue to feel surrounded by love. These boys are her legacy, Raisha's mother said. Everything we do now is for them, to honor her and to give them the future she wanted for them. The community, too, has stepped up to help. The GoFundMe campaign established in Raisha's name has provided financial support, helping to ease the burden of raising the boys. These funds are being used not only for their immediate needs, but also to invest in their education and future opportunities. Beyond financial support, the community has provided emotional care. Counselors and support groups have reached out to help the boys process their grief. Friends and neighbors check in regularly, ensuring that the family knows they are not alone in their journey. The boys are carrying forward their mother's legacy in ways that bring comfort to the family. Raisha's oldest son, now 12, has shown remarkable strength, stepping up to help care for his younger brother in the wake of their loss. He's so much like her, Rhonda shared. The way he looks out for his brother, the way he keeps pushing forward, it's like Raisha's spirit is living on through him. Raisha's spirit is living on through him. Her youngest son, though still grappling with the trauma of that day, is finding ways to hold on to the memories of his mother. He often talks about her, sharing stories of her laughter and the little moments they spent together. He remembers her love, Rhonda said, and that's what keeps him going. As the family looks to the future, they are determined to ensure that Raisha's boys grow up knowing just how much their mother loved them and how proud she would be of them. They see her resilience in the boys' determination to keep moving forward and her kindness in the way they treat others. For the Hurd family, remembering Raisha is not just about mourning her loss, it's about celebrating the incredible woman she was and the legacy she left behind. Raisha may not be here with us anymore, her father said, but she's still with us in everything we do. She's in her boys, in our hearts, and in the way we continue to love each other. The family remains hopeful that her sons will carry forward her spirit, growing into the kind of strong, loving men Raisha dreamed they would be. She wanted the best for them, Rhonda said, and we're going to make sure they have it. That's what she would have wanted, and that's what we'll do for her. The story of Raisha Hurd is one of unimaginable loss, but it is also a stark reminder of the dangers that persist in our society. Her life was taken in an act of senseless violence, leaving her two sons without their mother, her family shattered, and a community grieving. Raisha's death underscores the devastating consequences of domestic violence and the urgent need for action to prevent similar tragedies. The sign of tragedy is the promise of senseless violence and the urgent need for action to prevent similar tragedies. See, domestic violence isn't just a personal issue, it's a societal one. It tears apart families, devastates communities, and leaves scars that last for generations. Raisha's story highlights the importance of recognizing the signs of abuse, offering support to those in danger, and addressing the systemic issues that allow these tragedies to occur. The role of gun violence in this case is equally critical. The presence of a firearm in an abusive relationship increases the likelihood of fatal outcomes exponentially, as seen in Raisha's tragic end. Her story is a call to reevaluate how we approach gun control, particularly when it comes to preventing known abusers from accessing weapons. And for Raisha's family, this tragedy has become a mission to ensure that her death is not in vain, that her story brings about change, and that her legacy is one of resilience, love, and hope. Raisha's story teaches us that we all have a role to play in preventing domestic violence and addressing gun violence. Educating ourselves about the warning signs of abuse is crucial. Domestic violence doesn't always start with physical violence. It can begin with control, manipulation, and emotional abuse. Recognizing these signs early and offering support to those affected can save lives. If you or someone you know is in danger, reach out to local organizations or national hotlines that specialize in domestic violence prevention. These resources provide critical support, including shelters, counseling, and legal aid for those trying to escape abusive situations. Supporting prevention efforts is another key step. Consider donating to organizations that advocate for survivors, volunteering your time, or participating in events that raise awareness. By getting involved, you can help create a safer environment for everyone in your community. Most importantly, stay vigilant. If you suspect someone in your life is experiencing abuse, don't ignore the signs. A small act of kindness, a listening ear, or pointing them toward resources could make all the difference. If Raisha's story has moved you, and if you believe in shedding light on the tragedies that affect families and communities like hers, we invite you to join us. Subscribe to our channel to stay informed about more true crime stories, unresolved cases, and the efforts to bring justice to those who deserve it. Click the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Together, we can amplify the voices of victims, support their families, and advocate for a world where stories like Raisha's no longer happen. Raisha Hurd's story is a heartbreaking reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of protecting the people we love. Her life may have been tragically cut short, but her legacy continues through her sons, her family, and the fight for justice that carries her name. Her playing game. Let's honor Raisha's memory by working toward a safer, more compassionate world. One where victims of abuse are supported, where violence is not tolerated, and where